All right, so get this from the world of, body slams and steel cages right to the top of the U.S. education system.
Oh, wow.
That's the potential path for Linda McMahon.
Huh, interesting.
Her Donald Trump's pick to be the education secretary.
It is definitely a fascinating story.
It is.
I mean, you probably know her best as the former CEO of WWE.
Right.
That huge global entertainment company
Huge.
built on pro wrestling.
Yeah.
But now she's poised to possibly shape the future of learning in America.
You got to admit, at first glance, it's like, wait, what?
It's a head scratcher.
What does a wrestling executive know about
Okay.
running the U.S. education system?
Yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today.
Exactly.
Really unpacking McMahon's background, her experience, or, maybe lack thereof in education.
Right.
And what we might expect if she actually gets this job.
Yeah, let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Linda McMahon, born Linda Marie Edwards, met her husband Vince McMahon way back when they were just teenagers. She actually graduated with a teaching certificate.
Really?
Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately chose a different path and joined her husband in the world of pro wrestling.
And that's where things get really wild.
Yeah.
I mean, together, they turned WWE from this small regional thing into this massive multinational entertainment company.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking like landmark TV deals.
Yeah.
Merchandise galore.
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards.
It's a huge empire.
And Linda was right in the middle of it all. First as president
Mm-hmm.
and then CEO.
She was super involved in the business side of things, negotiating those major deals, like that huge one with Viacom.
Right.
It's clear she knows how to lead and build successful companies.
But we're talking about education,
Yeah.
not pay-per-view events.
Right, and that's where the questions start to pop up.
Okay.
Her direct experience in education is pretty limited. She was on the Connecticut Board of Education just for a year
Okay.
and has been involved with Sacred Heart University for over a decade, serving on their board of trustees and donating a lot of money.
So,
But that's about it.
So not exactly a seasoned education veteran,
Right.
but there's one more piece to this puzzle.
Okay.
Her involvement with the American Policy Institute,
API.
API.
Yes.
This conservative think tank
Right.
promotes conservative education policies.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
What API believes in often ends up becoming real policy changes.
Interesting.
So understanding their positions gives us a peek into what McMahon might focus on as education secretary.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
What are some things we might see from Linda McMahon at the head of the Department of Education?
Well, one big thing is school choice.
Okay.
She's a big supporter of school vouchers, which would let parents use public funds to send their kids to private schools.
Interesting.
This aligns with this broader push from conservatives for parents to have more control in education.
But wouldn't that mean less money for public schools?
That's a big point of debate.
Yeah.
Critics worry that vouchers could take away resources from public schools, especially those in low-income areas.
Right.
They say it could make the inequalities in the education system even worse. But supporters say that vouchers give parents more options and could improve education for students who are stuck in schools that are failing.
So it's a really complex issue with potentially big consequences,
Yes.
especially for students who are already disadvantaged.
Yes, very much so.
What else might be on her agenda?
Another possible hot topic is the culture wars in education. API has been very vocal against teaching things like gender identity and sexual orientation in schools.
Okay.
So we might see those issues become even more heated under McMahon's leadership.
So potential for some major changes
Yeah.
and maybe even some controversy if she gets the job.
Definitely possible.
But we should also look at the controversies that have followed McMahon herself.
Right. It's important to see the whole picture. There have been some legal challenges, including a lawsuit alleging WWE was negligent in handling child sexual abuse allegations during her time as CEO.
And there's also that memo from way back in 1989
Oh, yeah.
that came up during her Senate campaigns. It seemed to suggest she might have tipped off a doctor about an investigation into steroid distribution.
Right.
These are pretty serious accusations,
They are.
and they've definitely raised some questions.
Yeah, for sure.
We can't get into the specifics of the legal stuff,
Right.
but it's important for us to be aware of these issues from her past.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about her rise in WWE, her limited experience in education, and her potential policy priorities.
Yes.
But we can't forget the bigger context.
Right.
Trump himself has said he wants to dismantle the Department of Education.
That's right. And while that's not likely to actually happen,
Yeah.
it definitely makes things interesting for her potential leadership.
Right.
How would she handle that, especially with her background and her beliefs?
That's a good question.
It is.
And what about how all this will affect different groups of students? We talked about vouchers and potential shifts in funding,
Yeah.
but there's more to consider than just that, right?
Oh, absolutely. We need to think about students with disabilities,
Right.
students from low-income families, minority students.
Yeah.
How might these potential policy shifts affect their educational experiences and opportunities?
This is where things get really nuanced.
Exactly. And that's what we'll look at next.
Okay.
We'll unpack those potential impacts and
Yeah.
explore how complicated this whole situation really is.
Okay, buckle up, everyone.
Yeah.
It's about to get even more interesting.
Sure. Let's talk about something that could really, directly impact your kid's classroom.
Okay.
The curriculum.
Okay.
If McMahon's policies, kind of mirror what her think tank advocates,
Right.
we might see some pretty big changes in what's being taught,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to like gender and race.
That's something I think a lot of parents are concerned about these days.
Hmm.
So what kind of changes are we talking about? What would those mean for students?
Some people argue that, focusing on traditional academic subjects
Okay.
like math, science reading could lead to better test scores
Okay.
and better preparation for college.
Right.
They say schools shouldn't be getting into what they see as controversial social issues.
But isn't learning about different cultures and perspectives
Right.
an important part of education too?
That's the other side of the argument.
Okay.
Critics worry that narrowing the curriculum could limit students' exposure to diverse viewpoints and stifle their critical thinking skills.
Okay.
They say that leaving out topics like gender and race
Right.
creates a less inclusive learning environment and doesn't really equip students to deal with real-world issues.
There's like a clash of philosophies about what education should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it about acquiring knowledge and skills? Or is it about developing well-rounded individuals who can think critically and engage with the world? Linda McMahon's approach to this question could have a huge impact on the future of American education.
Yeah. Her leadership could really shape what our schools look like
Yeah, for years to come.
for years to come.
It's not just about one person taking a job.
Yeah.
It's about a potential shift in the whole educational landscape.
Wow.
How we think about schools,
Yeah.
what we teach our kids, how we prepare them for the future.
It's a lot to consider.
It is.
So what does all this mean for our listeners?
Right.
The parents, the students, the educators out there.
It means we're at a crossroads.
Okay.
The decisions made by leaders like Linda McMahon will have a ripple effect.
Wow.
They'll influence everything from what your kids learn in school to how those schools are funded and run.
And it means that staying informed and engaging in these discussions is more important now than ever.
I agree.
Yeah.
This deep dive isn't just about understanding Linda McMahon's background.
All right.
It's about understanding the forces shaping the future of education itself. The challenges, the opportunities, the different visions for what education should be.
We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
from her WWE days to her potential policies
Yeah.
to the controversies she's faced. But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to circle back to that lawsuit alleging WWE's negligence
Right.
in addressing child sexual abuse allegations.
Yeah, that's a serious issue we can't ignore.
Right.
The lawsuit accuses Linda McMahon and her husband of fostering a culture of abuse within WWE.
And it's important to remember that these are allegations,
Yes,
and the legal process is still ongoing.
absolutely.
But the lawsuit does raise some serious questions about her leadership and judgment.
It does.
It also brings up a bigger issue
Yeah.
that we've seen in many institutions,
Right.
the need for accountability and transparency
Yes.
when it comes to protecting vulnerable people, especially children.
Especially children.
So as we continue to follow Linda McMahon's journey,
Mm.
whether she's confirmed for this position or not, it's important to keep these allegations in mind
I agree.
and consider how they might affect her role and her legacy.
This goes beyond politics.
Absolutely.
It's about the well-being of children and the responsibility of those in power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can't predict the outcome of the lawsuit or what the future holds for Linda McMahon, but we encourage you, our listeners,
Yes.
to stay informed,
Yes.
ask questions,
Right.
and engage in these conversations.
Because at the end of the day, the future of education is a shared responsibility.
It is.
It's up to all of us to make sure that our schools are safe, equitable, and empowering for every student.
And that brings us to a really important point in this deep dive.
Okay.
We've explored Linda McMahon's background,
Yeah.
her potential impact on education,
Mm,
and the challenges she faces.
right.
But now we want to hear from you.
Yes. What are your thoughts?
What has stood out to you the most about Linda McMahon's story?
Hmm.
What are your hopes and concerns about her potential role as education secretary?
Right. What are you thinking?
What questions are still swirling around in your mind?
Yeah.
What more information would you like to see as this story continues to unfold?
Exactly.
We encourage you to keep digging, keep exploring,
Yes.
and keep the conversation going. We've talked about a lot with this potential appointment, but I think it comes down to one big question.
Yeah.
What does Linda McMahon's nomination really mean for the future of American education?
It really boils down to two very different views.
Okay.
On the one hand, you have people who see her business experience as a real strength.
Okay.
They think she can bring in a fresh perspective, shake things up,
Right.
and make the Department of Education more, efficient and effective.
They see her as a real advocate for school choice,
Yeah.
for parents having more control and shaking up what they see as a system that's just not working.
Exactly. They believe she'll cut through all the red tape,
Yeah.
streamline things,
Right.
and ultimately make things better for students.
Okay.
But then there's the other side.
Right. The people who are really worried about her lack of experience in education and her connection to API, that conservative think tank.
Right. They're concerned her policies could actually end up hurting the students they're supposed to be helping.
Yeah, their worry is that her policies could make the gap between rich and poor even bigger,
Mm-hmm.
undermine public education, and limit what's taught in schools in a way that's harmful to kids' development.
It's a clash of visions for what American education should be.
And it's a debate that's probably going to keep going,
Oh, yeah.
especially if she's confirmed.
Absolutely. This
Right.
isn't just about one person.
Right.
It's about a possible shift in the whole landscape of education.
Yeah.
And we just don't know how it's going to turn out.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
we want to leave you with something to think about.
All right.
Knowing what you now know about Linda McMahon,
Mm-hmm.
her background, her experiences, her potential policies,
Yeah.
what do you think her biggest impact on education will be? Will she meet the expectations of her supporters
Right.
and be a force for positive change?
Mm.
Or will her time be marked by the kind of controversy and division that her critics are worried about?
Yeah. What do you think?
It's a question that only time will answer.
True.
But we encourage you to keep researching, keep asking questions, and keep talking about this important issue about the future of education, because ultimately it affects us all.
It really does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Linda McMahon and how the American education system might change.
We'll be back soon with another interesting topic to explore. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those minds engaged